Hello and welcome to another Palabra Presents during our Hispanic Heritage Month. Special programming from Palabra from the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. And thanks for everybody for being here. This one is going to be a big pleasure for me, two longtime friends. But first I want to tell you a little bit about who's bringing this to you, and it's Palabra, which is the digital platform from the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. Who'd have thunk a year ago when we were contemplating this new platform that we'd have today 50 plus original stories, audio work, and short documentaries from freelance journalists who are part of NAHJ. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to many more stories as we ramp up toward the most important election in our lifetimes, I think, coming up in November. So stand by for more stories from Palabra. And in the meantime, I really want to take pleasure and relay to you this great pleasure I have in introducing two great friends of mine. We have Felix Contreras from NPR's Alt Latino. You know the voice, you know the show. It's set a new standard, I think, for music programming on behalf of this great world, rich world that we have in Latin music. Pan-American music. And I think that bar has been raised since Felix started having the following guest on his show a couple of times. And it's my friend and the one, the only, I've waited so long to use that line, the one and only, Lila Downs. Welcome, Lila. And, I just want to let everybody know that today we're going to talk about binational life, binational culture, bicultural living. You are an example of that on many levels. And, I want to kick off this conversation by talking a little bit about taking us back to when you and I first met, which was back in 1990. Well, I'm not going to say, but it was at a little bar in Coyoacán in Mexico City, El Hábito. And you were singing Summertime. And I remember having a great conversation with you and Paul afterward, after your set. And I just I was thinking back to that time and looking at where you are now and where the genre is, where the global music is, where the world of the Latino sound in global music is today. And I have to wonder, did you think at any time back then that your sound, your voice would be globally recognized, would be something that is the phenomenon that we can all relate to and identify pretty quickly?
Well, thank you. Wow. It's such an honor, such an honor to be talking with you, Ricardo, and also with Felix. And yeah, I guess that your question is, did I ever think? In a way, I think as a musician, you connect with so many ways of thinking and ways of life, and you hope for the best. But I think the important thing is to not lose sight of your message and of your art. And I say that in the more spiritual sense. And I think, yeah, being transfronteriza, as some of us may call ourselves, is an issue about finding your identity and figuring out how to explain yourself. And hopefully it doesn't get boring like what I'm saying right now. But through the art, it speaks for itself.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. It's just interesting to hear you talk about this binational living, because you're from both sides of the border. You grew up biculturally. You grew up in Minnesota, and you also grew up in Oaxaca. I think for a lot of us, it's part of our life. We have pie en ambos mundos, and I think your music has always relayed that, has always given us a way to relate to that kind of a life. And I think that Felix, this is the kind of a musical phenomena I think that your show has brought to light. And why was it crucial for you and important for you and for the show to have Lila on the very first time when you did so? And describe that moment when I think it was a Tiny Desk concert, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been a relationship, I think, between you guys that has also grown and has become a really cool part of the show.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and being part of this prestigious panel for NAHJ. I've been a supporter of NAHJ for a long time, and I really support the efforts of Palabra and congratulate you guys on moving so far in such a short amount of time, because you're doing important work. And important work in terms of, especially in terms of featuring the music and the thoughts of someone like Lila Downs. Now, Lila, we have to put it in the context of the show, because the show turned 10 years in June, and what I've always tried to do, even when I started the show with my colleague my then colleague Jasmine Garst, when we started the show 10 years ago, was to show that binationalism with Latinos here in the United States and from wherever they came. Jasmine was from Argentina. Okay, I'm from California, but my cultural roots are in Mexico. So it was always important for us to show the binationalism, the biculturalism, and how music is used to interpret these two sides of where we all come from. And Lila in particular her music always stuck out to me even before we met, and I've been a fan of hers for a very, very long time, because it speaks to obviously my Mexican cultural heritage, but also as I read interviews with her, found out she's a big jazz fan, which we talked about on the show when I had her on the first time. She's singing George Gershwin when you meet her the first time, and Ella sang that, Miles sang that, everybody, Miles played it, it's a jazz standard. And it just shows, it's a perfect example of how, like you said, one foot in each culture, and how that relates to people. It related to you, it related to me. It's something that we can tag ourselves with. So yeah, it's having Lila be part of the show is just a continuation of the goals and objectives of the show. And she's probably one of the finest examples of that kind of binational, bicultural expression.
Lila,
Thank you.
Go ahead. You were about to say.
Well, it's been, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a struggle. Of course, in the beginning, when we all met, to kind of explain and try to create art that makes bridges, that creates bridges, and so that continues to be the challenge, and of course teaching is one of my main concerns, and through music, hopefully teaching about this experience.
Right. And Lila, one thing that is a theme that I've always noticed in your music and your storytelling has been the border. This line that divides us artificially, across 3,000 miles between the U.S. and Mexico. But it comes up often as a theme in your music. And I'm wondering, what is it about it that inspires you? Is it an inspiration, or is it like a specter that you feel like you need to deal with, again, as a Mexican American or American and Mexican? It's that border. I remember you talking. There was a whole album that you had done about the border, and what was it that inspired you to go in that direction?
I think it's about the challenges that we face being from one or the other, and the notion of perception, and how perception is a tricky thing, especially as you learn who consider themselves a particular way, and then there is a whole immigrant community that considers themselves quite different. And then being in Mexico as well, there are certain judgments about who Mexican Americans are, who the Chicano community is, and a lot of ignorance on both sides, as well as from the indigenous communities. And since I come also from an indigenous mother, I think what has been surprising and not so surprising is that I think I have been most accepted by this group. And I say not so surprising because there's so much respect and love and thoughts about protecting Mother Earth, that I think they, in the communities that I have been in, feel like we have an understanding of these basic truths. And yet in the other communities, there's always this confusion going on, which is quite complicated and very difficult. But this is why we are so privileged as artists and musicians to be able to somehow communicate different levels of confusion and also of beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's so much beauty in all these shades of being transnational.
Yeah. And speaking of transnational, I remember once you telling me that you all were pleasantly surprised when you would travel around the world to find Mexicanos pretty much everywhere, right? The strangest place you found us. Describe an incident I think I remember one, but I'll let you talk about it. Where you came across Mexicanos who came out to see you perform.
Yeah, it's really wonderful when you go to places like Germany, or we went to Hong Kong and we found a bunch of Mexican people and and people who are also really into, admiring the Mexican culture and being proud of being Latin American. And I think that's what's so beautiful when you leave Mexico and you realize how we're all kind of striving for that. Cheated on our pride, and I think it's much the same as the African American movement, where you need to look to different pillars of culture and politics in order to feel like things are advancing. And I think that's really happening now, and thanks to people like you as well, who are the altavoz, who are that connector to the mixer and and making it possible for audiences to hear our voices, our multiple voices.
That's so true. And I think Felix, this brings me to this one question I've always wanted to ask you is with Alt Latino and within that world that you've created with Alt Latino, is there now a special, like, let's say, category in which you think that Lila fits into, or is it Pan-American? And it strikes me as, in terms of influences that you've seen on and performers that you've had on Alt Latino, just the diversity that's come on, and the richness of the sound of, say, of listening to Lila and watching her perform with a multitude of people over the years. Mm-hmm. But also on Alt Latino, it seems like there's a special place for her. For sure.
Absolutely, for a couple of different reasons. Like I said, I've been fortunate to be able to have this a very nice one-on-one friendship and relationship and connection, really, whenever we see each other, whether it's here in DC or once on the red carpet at the Latin Grammys, she came over and said hello. That was always very special. But the other place she has in the show is as a pioneer, because so many of the younger artists, and I think of people like Ana Tijoux, La Marisol from the group La Santa Cecilia, any number of these young female artists who are bicultural, binational, or expressing something within themselves, but also from the broader culture. All of that is because of follows in Lila's footsteps. In fact, she's walking around right now. We're following in her footsteps. Literally. Live TV, folks. I love it. But she has that place as a pioneer in expressing that early.
I'm so sorry. The signal is so bad in the kitchen that out there.
This is like a version of a Chicano version of MTV Cribs. We can get a chance to see your house.
No, mira, she's in the cocina now. We can.
Ahí está el santito.
we can get some vitamin T now, no? And do you have any vitamin M back there? A little mezcal, no? Not really.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, but again, going back to that, it's like, yeah, she has a place as a pioneer, and bridging those, being an example for a lot of these other young female artists that are trying to bridge those two, express being of two places at the same time. And I think that within the industry, people recognize that and see that, and especially on the show.
And Lila, does it take you to more work to be in the U.S., to tour in the U.S.? How do you feel when you cross that border? Do you feel fully American? And in Mexico, are you completamente mexicana?
My son Benito would say, excuse me, North American? I do. I feel kind of North American, like I have a right to claim that, but at times there are just, once in a while I will talk to someone who is Anglo, and it's like, I just feel like I'm not getting anywhere still. So I feel like that's part of the job that I have now, is to keep working on that area. And I kind of gave up on that area for a long time. I think that being Latin American and Mexican has been something that I really needed to feel, included as. And I'm still working on that one. Of course, having my last name Downs is something that contributes to the way that I perceive myself in the audiences. But I think I have been able to express my reality, and that has helped, the place that we have as musicians, and what we stand for, I guess I should say, in being a kind of a mixed person, but with indigenous roots. So yeah, I guess I feel like I'm a part of both countries still.
Right. And Felix, is there such a thing as a binational sound?
Oh yeah. It's well, I mean, I would say that it goes back to, it's all in the perception, right? I mean, one of the first times that I recognized binational characteristics is when I was a kid. I had an uncle who was a conjunto musician. He played guitar, and he's my dad's brother, and he had conjunto, had an accordion, a bass player, and in high school he asked me to play with him in some of these gigs. He asked my dad for permission, and we'd watch out. We were playing little bars and cantinas, under his strict supervision in Northern California. And so two things happened. I really gathered an appreciation for the accordion player, because to me, he was just like Charlie Parker. And the guy was just playing these riffs over and over and just riffing the whole time, just the way my young appreciation of Charlie Parker was. Charlie Parker was a jazz saxophonist, alto saxophonist. And so there I connect, well, that's like Charlie Parker. He's like a Chicano Charlie Parker. And the other thing was when they sang the conjunto vocals, it's a two-part harmony. Usually they get the bajo saxo player, the guitar player, the accordion player, they're singing two-part harmonies. Those two-part harmonies reminded me of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards singing their two-part harmonies on some of those Rolling Stones records. So, there is a structure, a binational structure, but then the actual sound, then you get into people like Lila, you get into people like Los Lobos, you get into people even going back, getting into people those two, are strictly Mexicano Chicano sounds, but going back to, Santana, Chicano, Azteca, Malo, the Afro-Caribbean and blues and, all of that stuff. Even going back to Jose Feliciano and the way he did Light My Fire, the way he did some of his early stuff, mixing in his riffs with that he did on the trio music, requintos, and then throwing in, he does a version of El Reloj where he does this little quinto riff, but then he bends the string at the end, just on the last string. He does a little blues move and bends the string like a blues player. It's so nuanced. It's in the DNA of who we are and how we express ourselves. And that's a perfect example. And Lila is in that line of succession.
Lila, for me, the one song that you did a few years ago that sort of exemplifies that in my mind is your take on the Woody Guthrie music, the Harvest tune, where you talk about the that line that you have where you sing the grapes that go into your fine sparkling white wine. That to me it just kind of bridges the border. All right. It leads me to this, maybe it's a difficult question, but you have to ask it. Audience wise, do you feel like you connect? I'm going to say that and excuse all my white relatives and friends and everything, but do you feel like you connect with North American audiences? Or is there still a disconnect between us and our world and what we would call mainstream culture and audiences in the U.S.?
I think, there still is a huge disconnect. But I think all of what is happening right now in terms of confrontation, with the races in the U.S. is very important, because I think what will happen is that we are having different conversations about this, and we're also discussing like what is the point of starting a reference. Like, it makes me think of what Felix was talking about. It's for me, it's like John Coltrane and Miles Davis and listening to that music when I was a child, and then thinking of Maria Sabina, Los Cantos de Maria Sabina, and thinking about Lola Beltrán and Cuco Sánchez and Lucha Reyes, and how are these references, because at one point in my life, were they the same? No, I think the North American culture is just so strong that you tend to think that it's worth more. And I think that that has been erased in my consciousness, and it's what I try to share with our audience. Paul is making a face like, what? Where are you going? But I think that we do need to bring these conversations, out about how we are not understood, and yet we deal with it in other ways, and that's what I mean. What we're trying to do constantly, I think, is bridge that gap as much as we can. We try to.
Right.
Can I add? I think that's what Lila's saying, and the most powerful tool we have to bridge that gap is music. You know, all respect to our political leaders who are, you know, working on the right side of this issue. All respect to social activists, people like Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta. You know, all respect to them. But really, it's music that brings people together. That's what I've seen doing this show. Even before doing the show, you go into different concerts, going to Los Lobos shows and seeing the mixed crowds, going to Lila's shows and seeing the mixed crowds, going to Santana shows and seeing, you know, a big mixed crowd. It's always music that brings people together. And if there are non-Latinos that can appreciate, you know, the accordion or the conga, you know, then we meet on those grounds, right? We meet in that middle ground, and that's where understanding. And then it's because I think we'd all agree the fear is all based on the anger is all based on fear of the unknown, right? That's what we're experiencing, not just right now, but always, anytime, anywhere, right? It's the fear of the unknown. But once that music coming from the bodega in New York is a little more familiar, or you have an understanding, or, you know, some of the music being played in Olvera Street in LA, you know, then it's like, oh, I know where that accordion, that's actually, you know, if you can have a North American, you know, non-Latino say, oh, you hear that accordion coming from that little restaurant? That's German, right? That's German polka. And if you have that understanding, then I think it builds that kind of community, a kind of closeness that helps us all get along. Right.
Hey, Lila, speaking of a diversity of sound and the global nature of music, who are you listening to these days?
Yeah.
Who's inspiring you these days on the music scene?
Oh my goodness. This is a question I always get so angry at myself, because I have all these people I'm listening to who are new, but let's see. I'm listening to a guy called Cristian Nodal, who writes these new rancheras and guapangos. And I'm listening to, I'm listening to a lot of jazz lately, and because we're working on some standards, and that's, let's see, what is her name? There's an amazing singer, Nikki Parrott, who I did not know before. And I'm listening to Cecile McLaurin Salvant.
Oh, yeah.
A jazz singer. Beautiful. You know, so it reminds me of Sarah Vaughan and also many other jazz singers. Yeah, so, and there's this amazing Catalan jazz singer called, ¿cómo se llama ella? Pérez Cruz, Silvia Pérez Cruz. Amazing, beautiful singer.
Wow.
And let me think of like Chicanos. Well, can you remember who are we listening to, Paul? I think I'm listening more actually to like bandas from Oaxaca. Like there's this banda called Las Flores del Viento. Flores del Viento. They're really cool. It's an all women's indigenous Mije band. And they are, you know, they were just given a bunch of instruments here, and so they're very happy. And, you know, some of these beautiful projects that are really flourishing that were just beginning, 20 years ago, these kinds of groups were really struggling. So I have been able to see that change, and that is really very inspiring.
Yeah, I think Felix, she just filled out your dance card for
that. Lila, I want to go back. Cristian, what's his last name?
Cristian Nodal.
Okay, N-O-T-A. Okay, that's what I put. All right. I was taking notes.
Cool.
Sylvia Perez Cruz, I have it somewhere there. She did a great duets album with a guitar player. If you don't have it, I'll send you the title.
Okay.
It's maybe from like 6-7 years ago, but it's spectacular.
Oh, yeah. I think I've heard some cuts from it. Yeah, it's beautiful, very intimate. Her voice is just gorgeous.
Yeah,
beautiful music. Yeah.
And it speaks to like the way jazz is being interpreted. You know, when you have people like Magos Herrera from Mexico doing jazz, there's a whole like trio, or there's a whole school of here in New York, like women from other countries singing jazz, but interpreting it in their own way.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's what we've been looking at, and it's very inspiring to see that change.
Yeah, there's a new I think she's Afro-Latina. I think she's Puerto Rican. Nubia Garcia. She's I'll send you her name and a link.
Okay.
She's a tenor saxophone player.
Cool.
Wow, really good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is so cool. I just love hearing you guys talk about this. This is like listening to two, outsized music nerds, right? And I think back to the days when I was in junior high school and high school playing saxophone. I'm thinking, oh man, this ain't going anywhere. I'm going to stay with journalism. But I just have to tell you that it is like a fanboy moment almost. Hearing you talk about the influences that continue today, because regardless of our ages, right, regardless of how long we've been in the business, we're continuing to absorb stuff. I think back to the days when I was a kid, my mom would get mad at me, not because of what I didn't do in school that day, but she just would ask me, ¿Qué aprendiste hoy? What did you learn today? Mm-hmm. Did you learn something new? And she said, if you didn't, then you didn't live. And I still carry that. And I get that from both of you guys, that you're constantly looking for new influences, to learn something new, to make, what you do all the better. And that brings me to this fanboy question. Who has been your favorite duet? I mean, you've sung with all kinds of people, right? Yeah. I remember talking briefly with Juanes after one of the Tiny Desks and reminding him that I love that song that he does with you, right? And it's nice to lit up. So I think I'll ask you from this point, from your perspective, who has been your favorite duet?
Don't get her in trouble, man.
No, actually, I just like that. If I go over everything, then of course, it's confusing because I think of Mercedes Sosa, and I couldn't, not say Mercedes Sosa because she's like the reference for my life and my, my voice and everything, my spirituality. But I think after that, I would say there's this band here in Mexico City that are half Argentinians, and they're called Pâté de Foie. Oh, yeah. Pâté de Foie. And I really like what we did with them. They invited me to sing a song with them, but I was really happy with the way it sounds. What's that, Paul? Paul has his favorite. What's your favorite?
I like Juan Gabriel.
Oh, Juan Gabriel. Paul likes Juan Gabriel.
You can't forget Juanga.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so naturally, then the question is, what's next? What do you want to do? I mean, there's only so much we can do these days, right? I love the concert, the virtual concert for El Grito.
Oh, sí lo viste.
Like, okay, that's what we've all been reduced to that.
I know, right?
And I know for artists, being with an audience, especially these days, and being in concert and touring, this is life, right? This is your life now.
Yeah.
So what do you do now? And when this is all over, what do you have planned?
Yeah. Well, I think that we're kind of trying to figure out, well, do we still do the music from the last album, or what's going on with that? It's like, oh no, well, I guess we're not going to be able to perform a lot of these tunes that were like dance tunes for the clubs. We had lined up a lot of club gigs in Europe and in the US to enjoy that music. So I think we're probably going to combine it, don't you think, Paul, with some of our new songs that we're writing, and some of them are more R&B-ish, and some of them are very ranchera. So I've been wanting to do this album with mariachi forever, and I think it's finally gonna be a beautiful project for us, and maybe with the Mariachi Vargas, or maybe with the all women's mariachi, which is something that we are looking forward to. We've performed with them before, and it's really fun, and they're super musicians in Jalisco, and so yeah, that's what we're looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to doing the standards, and that's also something that's quite different, and I really don't know what's going to happen. I'm sure a lot of our fans are going to go, huh? But at this point, it's like you remember that life is only one time again.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. That it's been a pleasure and amazing to see the career arc, right? And I don't know if you remember one of the first concerts that we were involved in. It was in our backyard in Mexico City.
Yeah.
All the kids. I remember my daughter wearing her little her ranchera outfit. Just sit in the front row and listen to you sing. That you had that impact, and you've also had a pretty amazing and interesting evolution, as it were. And I'm wondering if that in say 5 years from now, where do you see yourself, just in terms of the style of music that you're into and anticipate getting into? It's impossible to think about.
Yeah, no, it is. I think, there's a friend of ours who said something to me one time, and her name is Jesusa Rodriguez, and you know her because she was in charge of that bar, El Hábito. And she said to me, Lila, you can sing everything that you want, but in the core, you are a ranchera singer. And I remember that it kind of pissed me off, I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to show you. But I think that it's as you get older, you kind of go back to your essence, and you just, you want to keep things more simple. And so I think there is truth to her words.
That's great. And Felix, what's lined up for Alt Latino? What do you have planned for us?
Well, right now we're in the middle of Latino Heritage Month content. Got a lot of really cool stuff. In fact, speaking of Santana, I have an interview with some of the original members of the band. This is the 50th anniversary of their second album, Abraxas, which was a musical game changer. So I've got that coming up this week. Plug. But we're just going to continue to keep putting stuff out. I'm planning on doing, every year I do a sonic altar for Dia de los Muertos, and I think this year we're going to dedicate it to ask people who have lost folks to this ugly pandemic to write in dedications. So we'll dedicate music to the victims of the pandemic. So that's coming up. And then broader, we just finished 10 years, and I got to start working on the quinceañera now in 5 years from now. So,
You have a dress picked out and everything?
What's that?
You have a dress picked out and everything?
It's being worked on right now, bro. I'm reaching out to designers right now. But they just closed JC Penney. So
a final question for you. It just strikes me as something that is of the moment, right? And I've seen you perform during the pandemic now. It looks like you guys are nice and tucked in there in Oaxaca. Does this period in our time, is it inspiring you to think of new storytelling? This pandemic and how it's affected so many people It doesn't care about borders. It doesn't care who you are, what station in life you are. Yeah, we're all in the same boat, but yeah, and it's true. Some people already have dibs on the lifeboats in first class, right? But the rest of us, we're all living through this. And I'm wondering if for you, if it's inspiring your music in any direction.
Definitely. I think that this has been a challenge in so many ways and in waves, you know, and depending on what your position is socially and economically as well. And so these are issues that are always open for discussion in song, and they will come through through the songwriting. I'm sure of that. We already, you know, did a song kind of about the beginning of the pandemic. So as time progresses with this, hopefully we make it through, because those are some of the thoughts that go through our minds as well, right?
Yeah.
Fear provokes, you know, creation as well, and I think it's very strong for composing. It certainly is quite different than comfort and pura gozadera and all enjoyment. It motivates you to think about the bigger things, the important things.
Yeah. Hey, no, I think that's a really good thought. I mean, I hate to end it on a downer, but you know, for us, for Mexicanos, I mean, look, I have my Dias de los Muertos. My amigos are out.
Yeah.
Like I said, hey, if Costco can start selling Christmas trees right now, you know, I can certainly bring out the Day of the Dead, you know, figures, and we can start thinking about that. This year, obviously, it's going to be a very special and impactful Day of the Dead. But hey, listen, this has been great. We could go on forever, as you know. We've gone on forever in the past. But we do have to be mindful of the clock, and I want to thank you guys for taking the time, you know, showing our broad reach here, reaching all the way down to Oaxaca to pick you up and have you on live. And, you know, again, I just want to say thanks. I want to say best of luck. Y'all stay safe. And Felix, we'll see you this weekend, eh?
Yeah.
Are you bringing the mezcal or am I?
I'll have it in the back. Don't worry.
Okay. All right.
I'll put it in the drum case.
All right. But
yeah, we should send you some mezcal from Oaxaca. We'll send you.
I know. Yeah, FedEx still works, baby.
Thank you, Felix. Good to see you.
Good to see you, amor. Good to see you.
And thank everybody for joining us once again with Palabra Presents. Look forward to much more during Hispanic Heritage Month. You know, just keep us in mind when you're looking for good storytelling. Turn to Palabra. We're there for you. And remember that this is about you guys. So if you have a great story idea, you want to get into something, audio, video, just look me up. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.